early. And of course, I saw the ceiling peeling back and these ethereal bodies coming down and sitting on the end of my grandmother's bed. And of course, like any small child, seeing something like that, the first thing, the reaction is to scream and make a noise. And my mum would come up and she'd say, "Oh, you're just having a bad nightmare. Don't worry about it." Because in those days, I was born in the late 1950s. So these days, it's more open and people talk about these things. And a lot of enlightened parents are now embracing the fact that maybe their child is seeing spirit and explaining it to them and not making it a scary example of what's going on. So, I used to see things, say things to people and get into trouble. And in my teenage years really was, I suppose, the point where I had to shut it down because my mum took me to see a psychiatrist and I was seeing all these, I suppose in those days, in the 60s, it was like, what's happening with this child? And, I was probably a very awkward teenager and rambunctious one like most kids are when they're in their teenage years. And add to that, I'm telling people all these weird stuff.
Now, Debbie, now, a question. Okay, when you were a teenager and you were seeing, spirits and stuff, when I was because I'm a few years older than you, but I remember like one of my first girlfriends I had, she was so beautiful. I couldn't wait to go out with her. We went out on like one date and she told me she was into witchcraft and she was a witch. And that was the last date I went on. So did you find it was kind of hard, like getting boyfriends when you were a teenager?
From my perspective, I can remember this one time I was on the bus coming home from school, and this was in England, and I thought I was sure I saw Jesus Christ, and I saw this beautiful ethereal glowing body outside the bus, and of course I'm going, everybody must be able to see this, and I'm going, look, there's Jesus. So you can imagine, that kind of thing doesn't go down too well with a lot of teenage girls and boys and other people on the bus. So that's when my mum decided that maybe she should take me and see somebody. And of course, at that point, I was a little bit scared because in those days, they had that lovely white little jacket that they would put on you and put you in a padded room. So I was a bit scared that I would end up in a mental institution. So I pretended I'd made it all up and shut everything down, which, in hindsight, I suppose it was a protective way of, what do I do kind of thing? Because there was nobody to talk to. There was nobody there that I could say, oh, this is happening, I'm seeing spirit, because, the psychiatrist thought, it was a whack job, which is fine. I probably am, but that's okay. So it was after my teenage years when I left home, and then I would play with tarot cards and use them to do readings for people and things like that. And I decided to go on this course to learn how to use tarot correctly. I'd just been playing with it and using it as people do. And I thought, I want to learn how to do it properly, and went on this course and met somebody else there that did readings the way I did it, that was not really looking at the cards or the definitions, that kind of thing. I was just getting the information. So then knowing there was another whack job like me out there in the nicest possible way. And of course, we're talking in a time and era before internet, where people actually went to the library, got a book and read it, or went on a course or something like that. So a group of us sort of started to meet once a week, and one person would go on a course or read a book or that kind of thing, and then tier it down to everybody else. And then I got the opportunity to go to the Arthur Findlay College of Metaphysics, which is a bit like Hogwarts.
Oh, wow.
It's in Essex in the UK, and in those days they just basically focused on mediumship and clairvoyance and healing. Since then they branched off into doing lots of other metaphysical subjects. So it's a beautiful place. And it was then I realized I was home, if you like. When you're there amongst other people that are like you and see things and can share without sort of feeling that it was some kind of secret society. So that was, I suppose, for me, understanding more and accepting. And of course, as they say, the rest is history. Yes, like many people, I balanced working in corporate world with my work until a point came when it was like I had to make a decision to to say, cross over to the other side of the road and do this full time, which is what I do now. So, and, that part of that transformation was in 2010 when I started to get the information to create an oracle deck. And at that time, it's like, I'm not Doreen Virtue. I'm not any of these people that create all these things. So, there was a lot of doubt. And I actually am a very big skeptic. And so I question a lot. And I think Spirit, from my perspective, go, oh, gosh, here we go again. She's going to ask us all these questions and doubt us. And, and I think I sort of visualize being in this classroom with these Spirit teachers that go, we've got the awkward one again. Why do I get the awkward one? What did I do to get stuck with her? But, that's joking aside, because that's me. I question things. And, that's something I tell people to do, question things. You don't have to take it carte blanche that, somebody says this is going to happen. Question it. So, but yeah, that's sort of the podded version coming up to where I am today. So.
Okay, now, with spirits and stuff, it's funny. It's been a couple of things. That's why I do this show. I'm retired, and when I sat down and I tried to figure out what did I want to do in my life, and I've been involved in a couple of paranormal things in my life that was kind of scary on a couple of them. And I used to be in broadcasting when I was younger, and
right.
And I figured, well, you know what? Since I'm retired, it's two things I can do. I can ride my Harley motorcycle, and I can do broadcasting again, which I love it. I used to do talk shows and all that stuff, and paranormal. And I sat back and listened to a lot of these paranormal shows, and it's not paranormal the way I like it. I kind of like it like the 80s and 90s, where it was more entertainment, where you could get involved into it and, make the listeners feel part of it. And that's why I'm doing the show. But there was a couple of times in my life, like I ran a business, and I had a lot of employees over a long period of time. They kept telling me the basement was haunted. And I looked at some of these people like, wow, you're behind their back. I thought they were strange till a few years later, it happened to me. And when it happened to me in that building, my whole philosophy of the paranormal totally changed. I'm a 100% believer. Okay. I mean, seriously, I somebody tapped me on the back of the shoulder in an empty basement, and there was nobody there. And, the footprint, steps and things like that got me into believing there is a hereafter. My question to you, Debbie, on spirits, are there evil spirits out there that can physically do harm? And, and why are they here?
Yeah, I do believe there are. And it's just like here on Earth, I always say to people, if somebody's done something bad here on Earth, when they go to cross over to the other side, they don't become an angel overnight. There's a transition of like when we're here that we have to work on to change our direction and, really do I suppose a soul searching to cross over. But sadly, yes, there are evil spirits here, or people that come back, and sometimes, it can come in different ways. I'll try and give an example. Some years ago, I was on tour across Canada, and I was in New Brunswick, and I had been doing readings there in the store during the daytime, and the lady there was involved with a paranormal group. And it was something I'd never really done before. I'd heard about them and never had the joy or the experience of being part of or standing in the background kind of thing. And she said, well, would you like to come along? We've had a situation. I said, well, don't tell me anything else, because for me, if you start telling me things, then I'm going to use my own imagination to fill in the blanks. I'd rather have a blank screen and then go in blind and get some ideas. So she took me into this building, and I started to walk around, and I'm like, okay, there's just something in here that isn't right. And so I walked around and told her some of the areas. And, of course, I hadn't any idea of the building or what was in there. And I said, I need to get down in the basement. I'm assuming there's a basement. And she said, yes, there is. So we went into the basement, and I said, this is really, and this is where we're going out of the bounds of normal things. So anybody listening in, please don't assume this happens all the time. And this is everything, with people that have spooky stuff going on in their house. But anyway, with this particular building, it was almost like there was a time capsule, if you can understand that, in this basement. I was getting different people from different eras, and I'm going, okay, I know the building's old, because in New Brunswick, in St. John's, it's there's a lot of older buildings in there. And, I said, whatever this is, I just don't like the energy. So she said, well, she then came clean and told me what she knew. So all I had done was confirmed what she had picked up. And she said, well, we're having a paranormal group come in here this evening. Would you like to come along and, take part? And I said, well, all I know is we all have to protect ourselves extremely well. And anybody that steps into fear when they're in here needs to get out of the building immediately. So they came and set up all their equipment, and it was quite amazing. I was absolutely awe-smacked, if you like, because I'd never seen all these, meters that tell hot and cold and, pick up different things. So, and I didn't realize, of course, I'm a bit naive on that kind of thing, that when we went down into the basement, they switch all the lights off so that they can get, the equipment can pick up everything. Rather than it being light sensitive. So I was fine with that. But what was happening is this ethereal body, because I don't know if it was a spirit or what it was, but was basically, everybody was sitting on one side, and they said, come and sit over here. And I said, no, I want to sit over here on this wall. And then I realized why, because this thing was going up behind all these people and basically making the hairs literally on the back of their neck stand up. And I could see it, and it didn't like the fact that I could see it. And it was getting annoyed with me, and then a few people left because they were, obviously getting a little concerned or scared or whatever. And I said, you need to get out of the building. Don't stay here because it feeds off your fear. And there was just myself and the cameraman there. So I was holding the, whatever the meter is that senses things, and I was sort of asking him to point the camera in different places, and even he got to the point where he didn't want to be in there anymore. So sort of the bottom line, they left the equipment going on all night, and I think there was some activity they picked up, but as soon as we left, it calmed down. So they did get somebody in to do what they call a house clearing on it. But yeah, it was quite something. But this, and I use the word ethereal body because I didn't get a sense that it was a time-sensitive soul that had died and gone into spirit. And this is where we're stepping into the realms of my skeptic self going, I assume that people live, they die, they go to spirit, and their body, if you like, or their spirit, their soul can be trapped. But this was from some other kind of timeline or something like that. And of course, that was not a sphere that I know anything about or understand. So I definitely felt like I was stepping into the twilight zone at that one, but it really was not. I just got the sense somehow it had come through a portal, got stuck there, and was causing havoc and had been there several centuries. Hence, souls that had lived in there or in that era. And that was something I didn't know, that Canada actually had slaves, because I had seen a slave boy down in this room, and I said, well, I didn't think Canada had slaves, and they said, yes, there were some slaves in this area. So I'm going, okay, that's something I had learned. So yeah, it was a bit, as I say, the twilight zone for me, and the skeptic in me kept on questioning things, especially afterwards. But would I want to do it again? I don't know. It wouldn't be a full-time thing that I'd want to do, not with that kind of energy, because it was a bit heavy. But, I've been in places where I've picked up ghosts that have walked past me, and they've been quite interactive and playful. And that's fine. So, yeah, in answering to your question, I think, yes, there are evil spirits that are in spirit, and sometimes they can walk amongst us here.
Yeah, I don't know. I know in the situation where it happened to me, like these employees would come up from the basement. The building was built